Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Good evening, y'all. This is your radio host this evening, awarded author, model, speaker, Shanalee Sharboneau, but that's not the impressive thing. The impressive thing this evening is I am with the very talented author, Lou Alpert. How are you doing this evening, dear?
I'm good, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Lou has an incredible story. We spoke yesterday. You know, it's amazing how interesting individuals are in the world, and for some reason I keep getting blessed with the most interesting individuals of the world. She actually wrote a book. It's called Surrender, a Love Letter to My Daughter, just recently released. This is an interesting book. It touches on a mom's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and her experience with having a daughter who actually succumbed to heroin. As a parent myself, of course, my child's 9. I still lay awake, with the fear that, all the stories you hear out in the news of, kids getting involved in the worst possible things and not being able to get out, drugs being one of them. We're going to talk a little with Lou on her story and then go into her book. Lou, it was your daughter, wasn't it?
Yes, Crystal, I have 8 children, and Crystal is one of my children. I have 6 biological children, 1 stepdaughter, and Crystal came to live with me right before she turned 16.
Wow. And, one thing I want to kind of tell everybody, to the audience, is that when she started her trek into drugs, she was 31. And I want to keep that in mind, because I think as a parent, your mind skips all over the place. So kind of tell her story about 16 and how fabulous she was doing in high school, and kind of her story going from homecoming queen to a heroin addict, if you will.
Yes, Crystal came to live with me right before her 16th birthday. I'm her 3rd mother. She was put up for adoption at birth, and then those parents gave her to me when she was 16. And it was a circumstance where I think they had moved from a very small town in Canada to Dallas and put her in a big high school, and she was running with probably not the best group of kids and sneaking out and doing what teenagers do. I had another 5 teenagers at that point, so I got it. And I didn't think she needed anything more than someone to listen to her. And they were pretty determined to put her in like a group home or something like that. And I felt like we were a better solution. So we offered she ended up at my house one night through my godson and ended up staying. I sent her back at one point because her parents wanted her back, and I had no legal rights to her. And she went back, and they had her copying Bible verses and doing all sorts of stuff. And then they just met me one night. They called me and met me and handed me Crystal in 2 boxes and walked out of her life pretty much. And they came back. They do tend to come back, but it's never been good. Once they're a trigger now. They put her stuff in the front yard and told her that it was no longer her home, and she already had abandonment issues, and that just sort of tipped them. So she's been with me since she was 16, and I went to high school, graduated, was homecoming queen, went to college in Santa Fe, went to the College of Santa Fe and graduated there, and was doing what young adults do. I like to say she had jobs, some better than others. She had boyfriends, some better than others. But in the end, she was living her life just like the rest of my kids were.
Wow. And did you see any signs that what was to come when she hit her 30s?
No, I mean, I knew that she had some borderline addiction problems, but I didn't think they were any worse than most of my other children. I mean, teenagers experiment and they try different things. Heroin was nowhere on my radar of drugs that would even cross her path.
Wow. So she's homecoming queen. She goes off to college. She actually received a degree, didn't she?
Yes.
And in what?
Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Wow. So, I mean, I mean, college is not an easy thing. So how did we get from a well-spoken college graduate? Did she get a job right after college?
She had a lot of jobs. You know, she worked at a spa for a long time, managing a spa and doing things like that. She worked in the service industry. Like most people who get a degree in art, you do different things so you can keep doing art and doing different things. So, you know, she was living in Santa Fe the whole time. She loved it there. She would come home for holidays. We would see each other. Very normal with the rest of the kids.
Wow.
But you know, when she spun out, she spun out big.
So talk about the spin out. How did we spin out? How did she get out of control?
I think, I don't know the whole story, okay, and I probably never will know it completely, but I had seen her for the holidays, and I would have had no suspicion that she was doing anything. I don't think she was doing heroin at all at that point. And by the end of April, her boyfriend was calling me and saying, if you don't come out here, she's going to die. She's doing heroin and meth. And he was doing it too. And I knew they never had any money. And I knew they weren't holding down jobs well. I didn't really know what was going on. I think I suspected relationship problems more than drugs. But, you know, because that's what happens in those 20s. And so she told me at one point, her boyfriend told me after we had taken her in and things like that, that they had a friend who was dying and he had opioids, and they were hanging out with him and comforting him, and they were sharing his drugs. And for Crystal, she took to it very quickly and then progressed to a needle very quickly.
Wow. So, you know, one of the things that I really respected, and I believe why this book has a complete 5-star review after 37, 38, 39 reviews, is the fact that you don't tell the story through her eyes. You tell the story through your eyes, through a parent's eyes, and you know what to do in that case, or what you could have done or felt like you could have done. Can you talk a little bit about you know, those feelings, and, you know, any good advice you could give parents out there, whether it's a 1-year-old or a 31-year-old, obviously, you know, what could you tell us? I want to know.
It's interesting because I grew up with a lot of addiction in my family. So I felt like I was equipped for this. That was my first mistake. I thought that I was well equipped to handle an addicted child because I'd gone through an alcoholic father, an addicted sister, and various other people in my family. I'd done my time at Al-Anon. I'd worked the 12 steps. And so when her boyfriend started calling me and saying, you need to come out, and then she would call me and she would sound perfectly normal and say, he's overreacting, I'm fine. That was before I really understood how normal a heroin addict can sound.
Wow.
She sounded very normal when she was high. When she didn't sound good was when she was coming off of it and when she couldn't get hold of the next, you know, dose. And so it took me a little while, but finally, you know, his calls were just too urgent. And even though I knew you can't make somebody get clean until they're ready to get clean, I believed I could fix it. And so I got in the car with my son, and my other kids were really urging me, you know, like, we got to do something. And so I finally decided I would get in the car and drive to New Mexico and look her in the face and tell her she was worth saving.
Wow.
And so my oldest son, who's significantly older than Crystal, I think they're about 10 years apart in age. And so he was not there that much growing up. He said he would go with me, and he was the one who I needed to go with me. And we got out there and we broke into her house, and, you know, it was pitch black and the shades were drawn, and my son looked around and there were needles on the floor and a belt hanging from a doorknob. And he said, this is a shooting den. And I found her in the back bedroom on the floor, just laying asleep. And I shook her and shook her. And finally she opened her eyes and just looked at me and said, I knew you'd come. And and I said, let me see your arms. And there were track marks. But once I got her in the light, there were also, she'd been shooting up in her neck and between her fingers and between her toes. I mean, she probably didn't weigh 92 pounds. Wow. And we convinced her to go to detox. And instead of driving out and driving home, we ended up staying out there until we got her into a detox program, which was not easy. You know, there you have to, I don't know how an addict gets themselves in by themselves. You have to have medical exams. You have to pick up prescriptions. You have to have a negative TB, test. And so there were a lot of hoops to jump through to get her in, but we got her in, and detox was just 7 days. And at the end of 7 days, she came to live with me in an apartment in Dallas and stayed with me in this 1,200 square feet with my son. I like to say my angsty 23-year-old who had just graduated from college, my detoxing, daughter, and a giant dog. And she stayed with me until they could get her a bed and a long-term program, because she needed 3 months at least. And so she was able to get into a long-term program because New Mexico gave her a bed. And we were very fortunate. I didn't have money to pay $50,000, $60,000 for her to go to rehab. I don't have that kind of money. And I think that's one of the problems that people don't think about, is that heroin addicts don't pay their insurance. And once they're off yours, then there's no real treatment options out there without waiting a little bit.
Wow.
You don't just walk in and get a bed. There's too many people waiting for beds.
That's good advice, because you don't realize what that moment will lead for you. You think that, it's just like going to the doctor. We're sick, we need help, let's just move on. You don't think of the other obstacles that, may hinder you at this point. Well, I want to leave it there because it's such a great story. She is famous because of the CNN tape. You want to touch on that for a minute and go from there?
Yes, basically, Crystal relapsed. She was clean 1.5 years after she finished her first rehab. She relapsed, and at that point, tried detox again, couldn't stay clean, ended up living on the streets. And she was on the streets for about 2.5 years. And during that time, we texted regularly. We talked some, but not that much. And she turned up pregnant, which horrified me. I was furious because what she was doing to herself was really bad, but I was furious that she was pregnant and doing this, using the whole time she was pregnant. And I knew she was injuring the baby. Mm-hmm. And she told me she was putting the baby up for adoption. And so we were communicating. And then I got a text from her in October that she had delivered a healthy baby. I had no idea where it was. And then on December 1st, I woke up, turned on the TV, and there was a big thing about her where she was being confronted by an Albuquerque policeman shooting up heroin in an alley, 6-7 months pregnant.
Well, let's stop here. That's a great stopping point. Talk about, what a mystery, So let's do this. We're talking to the very talented author, Lou Alpert, in discussing her recent book, A Love Letter to My Daughter, Surrender.
Hi, this is Alan at Ask Alan Anything, a podcast designed to help you learn about publishing and marketing your books. So join us live on Facebook at 8 p.m. Central Daylight Time. The page is Indie Beacon Radio. Ask any questions about publishing and marketing your book. We're here to help you, and we've been doing it for a long time. So I hope to see you then. Thanks.
Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Good evening, y'all. This is your radio host, Shanalee Sharboneau, talking to the very interesting Lou Alpert. She's discussing her story in regards to her daughter. She recently wrote the book Surrender, A Love Letter to My Daughter, just released this past April. And her experience in having a daughter at the age of 31, beginning her heroin addiction, and what that led to. So now your daughter's standing there in front of a cop, and from my understanding, why don't you take it from there? I want you to do this. You do it much better than I do.
Mhm. Well, basically, my son called me at 7 o'clock in the morning and said, Crystal's on. He was at the gym working out, and they have all the TVs. And so he called me and said, Crystal's on TV. And I turned it on, and it was her shooting up in the alley. And I had not seen Crystal since 2015, other than mugshots. And so, whereas everybody else was listening to the story, I was just listening. I mean, I had not seen her. I hadn't heard from her in a month. I didn't know if she was alive. And it was just seeing her move and listening to her voice. I realized, you miss them. And I tried to kept thinking I can capture it. I realized very quickly that not only could I not capture it, but it didn't matter because it was going to be on the internet forever. And after that, there were 2 more stories. One where they were trying to get her to go to rehab, and it was worse because she was crying, and they were trying to. But in the end, an interventionist saw the CNN story, a guy named Scotty Collins, who actually wrote the prologue to my book. He saw the CNN story and flew to Albuquerque, where she was at that point, and talked her and the guy she was with into going to rehab. And she had already had the baby, given it up for adoption to the policeman. And to the policeman's real credit, I mean, first of all, I think that the baby's in a very good place. Mm-hmm. And I also think that he didn't give up on Crystal. He kept getting in her face, trying to get her clean. And then when the interventionist came out, he was able to arrange for her to go to the kind of rehab I never could have sent her to. She ended up at Mending Fences, which uses horses as part of the therapy. It's a beautiful place in Florida. And they convinced her to go, finally. And then there was a series of just, every time I turn on the TV, the policeman would be like on Megyn Kelly with the baby. And then he was Trump's guest at the State of the Union with the baby. And
wow.
So it was like every time you get your feet on the ground, it would blow up again.
Yeah.
But in the end, Crystal got clean, and that's what mattered.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And so how do you now she's clean. Hopefully she's had a full extent of therapy to help deal and cleanse herself of her experience and maybe get healthy. But what about you? How did you get healthy?
Well, I think I got healthy writing the book. I didn't originally write the book to publish it. I wrote the book because I have, sometimes when you're having feelings that aren't the normal feelings that you would expect one to have, you have to get a little curious about what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. And I think that when Crystal got clean, instead of being like, oh, she's clean, I was furious. I was angry. Mm-hmm. I was angry at the policeman. I was angry at CNN. I was angry at the reporter. I was pretty, the things that came out of my mouth were crazy. But I think that when I wrote the book fast. I wrote it in about 45 days. And so I wrote and I didn't clean it up after I finished it. So it's pretty raw. I found all these text messages in my phone between the 2 of us that I couldn't believe were there, and used those as a format. So when Crystal would say to me, I don't remember, I'd say, I do. I have it time stamped and dated. And so I wrote the book, and it helped me figure it out. I think that I had prayed so hard for Crystal to get clean. But I sort of, like most of us, thought I could fix it. I wanted her clean on my terms, and my terms didn't include CNN and a policeman and, and all these other people, and I had been sort of Crystal's savior since she was 16. Mm-hmm. I'd been taking care of her since she had come to me as a teenager. And I like to say in about 2 seconds, my wings were cut and I was thrown off my cloud, and Ryan, the policeman, was her angel. And my ego took a hit. I mean, I had to accept that all these other people had done what I had been unable to do. We had been offering rehab for 2.5 years. And she had consistently said, I can't do it, Mom. I can't do it, Mama. I just can't do it. And they were able to do something that you think as the mother you would be able to do.
Wow.
And that's why it's called surrender, because in the end, I had to surrender everything, my child, my ego, my everything I ever thought I had to let go of.
Wow.
And
no, don't let me
go ahead.
stop you. And
Well, and I think that in the end, I mean, I still have not seen Crystal since 2015.
wow.
You know, we text, we talk, but we're both healing. I mean, I love Crystal. Crystal loves me. There was never any doubt about any of that. That was never a question. She had a disease. She was an addict. But while she was in active addiction, she was not my child. You know, she was, you know, stealing and lying and doing everything she could to get drugs. I also realized writing the book that I was just as addicted to her addiction as she was to heroin. You know, she wasn't the one, I was the one calling, you know, texting 10 different numbers trying to find her. I was the one calling the morgue. I was the one, you know, doing I had gone just as crazy in my own way. I had isolated, I had quit reaching out to people, and so I'd gone crazy in my own way.
Yeah.
And I think once she was safe in rehab, all those feelings and all those fears just exploded.
Wow. So how would this book, I know you wrote it for your healing. Is there an audience? I know I want to read it, just because to me that knowledge is priceless. That knowledge and that experience is amazing. And though my son may take a different path, hopefully better, maybe not, I just think, you know, understanding where you came from and what you felt would just be awe-inspiring. But did you write it for an audience? I mean, maybe after the fact, when you started to heal and you got the words on the page?
I think after the fact, I finished the book. I sent it to Crystal to read because I felt like, and I had no idea how she'd react. Okay.
Right.
And she was the first one to really encourage me to publish, to give a voice, to raise awareness. You know, she just kept saying this is such a huge problem and most parents lose their child, and you get to tell. Crystal is, and that alone is a miracle. She's walking and breathing, and there's no way she should have lived through what she did to herself, the amount of drugs she did, living on the streets, you know, all the risks that come with that, but she did live. And so I always say that as a parent, we have expectations for our children. We can't help ourselves. And my expectations for Crystal's life will never be what my expectations were. Okay, heroin took that away. But I sort of hope now that she exceeds my expectations. I'm hoping that now, as a clean addict who did what she did, was in it so deep, that she'll be able to help other people. And I hope as a parent, I mean, who's the audience? It's fascinating, the people who have reached out, who I haven't talked to in 20, 30 years, who have called with addiction in their family. Everyone's dealing with addiction of a loved one. And I think that the book is for anyone who's dealing with addiction, whether it be alcohol, food, cutting, you know, or heroin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're very correct. I think the fact that this will bring, because, you know, one of the things that scared me is my high school boyfriend one time, he did a couple things that I never did, thank God. And part of that was because my father had told this story, and you never know if it works on you or it worked on him. I think it worked on me. And he said that he was at college and he went into this gentleman who was a prisoner, and the prisoner, they were asking him about drugs, and I guess they were trying to make a point at the college. And the prisoner, now keep in mind, this is in the 60s, right? So some student raised his hand. He said, you know, there's nothing wrong with marijuana, keeping in mind we didn't know what's going on today. We just had the knowledge of what was marijuana in the 60s. And the prisoner looked at him, and my dad said his face was so cold. And he said, you know, I never knew anybody who started at marijuana and stopped. And whether that's true or not, it scared my father enough that he never touched anything. And it scared me enough that I wouldn't touch anything. And the scary thing about heroin is you can touch it for a second and it's over.
For a second, it's over. And just like you, I have a similar story that my sister did every drug It was the 60s. She did all the drugs. Mostly
Yeah.
she did hallucinogenics. And I didn't. I watched her life. She committed suicide in her early 20s. And so I didn't. We were very close. But I went to stay with her one weekend, and they had a kid in a room who I listened to him scream all night because they were trying to get him off heroin. And I remember her looking at me and saying, heroin is a drug for stupid people. Only stupid people do this drug.
Wow.
And I thought, well, from my sister who's doing every other drug on the face of the earth, I'll never touch this one. And my kids tell me I have told them that story, which is why they never would have touched heroin. It's, but Crystal wasn't around for that story early on in her life, you know, and
let's stop there, Lou. I want to stop there. I think that's a good positive point for parents to hear, or everybody, their friends. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a parent to worry about the people around you. We're going to be back again. We're talking with the very talented Lou Alpert, the author of Surrender, a Love Letter to My Daughter.
Authors, do you know the true cost of being published? In the Author's Revolution workbook, B.L. and Bourgeois gives you hands-on tools to use and to understand the true cost of being published. He will also give you information about low-cost or free programs that are designed to help you market your book. B.L. and Bourgeois has been helping hundreds of authors since 2011, educating them on how to better market and sell their books. Buy the Author's Revolution workbook exclusively at indielector.store.
Award-winning authors for the Techno Thrillers books, the Enigma book series. Technology, today's weapon of choice, the cyber good guys versus the cyber bad guys.
We invite you to join our website, theenigmaseries.com, where you will get sample chapters, sample audibles, book trailers, and you can sign up for our mailing list. The books are available in ebook, paperback, and Audible. Thank you.
Hi, this is Alan at Ask Alan Anything, a podcast designed to help you learn about publishing and marketing your books. So join us live on Facebook at 8 p.m. Central Daylight Time. The page is Indie Beacon Radio. Ask any questions about publishing and marketing your book. We're here to help you, and we've been doing it for a long time. So I hope to see you then. Thanks.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
Hi guys, we are back with Lou Alpert talking about her latest release, which is Surrender, a Love Letter to My Daughter. And thank you, Lou, for your incredible story. We're talking a little bit about, keeping people off of drugs and stories and things that have influenced us. So one thing, Lou, I wanted to touch on is, you're an amazing person. I could sit here for another 30 minutes, but I know the radio station doesn't want me to do that. Where can people find you? Are you going somewhere next? Where can people get in contact with you?
Well, I have a website. It's loualpertbooks.com, and I have a lot of blog postings for parents on grieving the living, the impermanence of life, lots of blog posts. So that's a good place to start. I'm doing some other radio and some book signings. I can't give you anything specific. The book's available pretty much anywhere. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and the general other places.
You're right. That's wonderful. And as you go out, I mean, I think you're a really good advocate for this. I mean, your daughter lived to tell about it. And, as a parent, that takes a lot. I'm sure it had to do a lot with you too. I'm sure it was angels and blessings and the cop and all this other stuff. But, I mean, if she wouldn't have had that basis there for you, I really think that it would have been a challenge. So don't take that away from you. Okay.
Right. No, I
writing that story.
I agree. The CNN reporter, when I met with him, because I did, he basically said that to me. He said, if you hadn't been doing what you were doing for the past 2.5 years, we wouldn't have found her.
Wow. Well, on that note, I just want to wrap up Lou's interview. Great interview, Lou. So interesting. This is Lou Alpert. She just wrote the book, Surrender, A Love Letter to My Daughter, recently released. Check it out on Amazon. Her reviews speak for themselves at 5-star, 39 customer reviews. Thank you all. Have a great night and enjoyed it. Peace.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.